Trying to rescue you two white girls.
I know. Glad somebody's trying.
Let me see. Wow. I'm gonna see if I can if I can get on my phone on my phone and see if that will work. Let me take down the
Zeb, are you out there? Are you able to turn on Dr. Horton's camera?
so there's no password, right?
There's no password.
Okay, I can go ahead on. Let me go ahead on it. I have Zoom
No,
on.
wait, before you, Dr. Horton, don't get off yet.
No, I got Zoom on my phone.
I know, but Zeb is trying to turn you on from his master control.
Oh, okay.
So let's just give it 1 minute because we don't have much more than that.
All right, come on. Where's my Zoom? That's oh, there it is.
So did the threat that you received, Denise, come from somebody who is angry about this work, or is it
angry, threw it all out there? So a lot of things are angry, and I'm in their system, and they're watching me now. So I'll pull it all together. So Dr. Horton, Zeb is saying that your video camera is off.
I don't
So
understand.
you see the video camera up on the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen, however you're.
Okay, let's see if I can start it.
You see the mic.
It's not it for so. I'm telling you this.
Does your camera have a little like X through it?
Yeah, and it says now it says it's just acting. It's going haywire.
But can you click on that and see if that red slash will go away?
But that's what I tried to do.
You know what? Every time you click on it, your name goes away. Your video is just black.
Okay. So
now
Zeb is saying the same thing again for you to get out and try to get in again. And we're going to give it another minute or two, and then we're going to have to make a decision.
All right.
All right, get out.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay. I feel bad. You look so good. All right. I'm going to forsake my good background.
It's a perfect background.
I know, it's sad. It's a sad day.
Where do you stay when you go up there?
I have a place on Lake Placid. All right, here we go. Let me go turn off the Humira commercial. Let me make my hair be less frizzy. So Erin, I'm going to, this week, because we have Labor Day, and next week we actually have our first session.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm going to try to we're going to probably regroup and not have Fridays, or look to see if people want a different day or whatever it may very well be.
Okay. Our first session is it the 11th or the 9th?
The 9th is the opening session with Dr. Horton and Dr. Olson.
Is David doing that?
I hope so.
Oh, okay.
If not, you're doing it, so. Okay. All right.
It still failed.
Oh, still failed.
I'm telling you, this is not, I don't think this is an accident. You know, we really need to start using a password, because I think someone sabotaged this.
You were on and then I don't know what happened. All right.
But we can't do it without Dr. Horton.
We can do it without you, Dr. Horton.
Okay, let me, okay, it's interesting. Let me see if I can get on my phone.
Okay. We're gonna try one more time and then
One more
I'm gonna
time.
ask you both if you can do it 7 o'clock on Wednesday. So yeah, we have, I don't know if David, David is, if David wants to do it, I don't know. Jonathan could do it, I mean, you've developed the whole thing. I mean, I just don't know how much of this you want to do.
What's the first one going to be? And so far as the time, just a quick little introductory, like 30-minute discussion about it?
Yes.
Oh, we have video.
He's at the Golden Gate Bridge. All right. I bet Zeb is a little nervous right now. So what's he got going on for us?
Can you,
right.
Can you see me now?
You are visible.
I can. You look fabulous.
Okay.
That's a much better background than my Adirondacks. I'm jealous.
Well, I can't,
All
you
right.
know, let me see if I can, oh yeah, that's better. Okay, now. So I've got the, all right. We'll just do it this way.
Looking over the bridge there.
Yeah.
I know. Yes.
I guess I just got to learn how to hold this thing or look into the camera right. Okay.
Do you have a little thing on your desk you can set it up on?
Let's see. One thing I can possibly set it up on is the computer. Okay, how is that?
That's perfect.
All right. So we're not going to let anybody stop us.
There you go.
Absolutely refuse.
All
There's
right.
no chance.
So
Denise, Zeb says you disappeared.
can he see me? He can't
Me?
see.
He said Denise disappeared.
I'm here.
Oh.
I'm sending myself the questions. I'm here. Don't worry. You can't get rid of me.
Whew, thank God for the iPhone.
I know. I do mine on the iPhone because of my
get rid of
ability
me.
to put it in all different locations.
Whew, thank God for the iPhone.
Right. I know. So
All right,
I have
mine
a
on
bunch
the
of
iPhone
questions. They're all
because of
kind of the
the-
same stuff we've talked
my
about. There's
ability
nothing here.
to-
If I feel like it's too put it in all
Gonna
different
blindside
locations,
you,
I won't ask it, or
I
you can just
see.
answer it any way you choose.
Okay.
So, all right, I have a bunch of questions. They're all kind of the same stuff we've talked about. There's nothing here. If I feel like it's too
A lot of
blindside you, I won't
this
ask
stuff
it, or
is
you
just
can just
people-
answer it any way you choose.
Okay.
Trying to share some other resources with us.
Okay.
I mean, from what I've seen, everything sounds to be mostly positive. People are responding well to the material and enjoying what they're
Absolutely.
Yeah, then they're wrestling with it some too, but in some really positive ways. I haven't seen too much negativity or really condemnation of any of the articles or the opportunity to learn or anything like that.
I don't
It's-
think there's been anything like that. I think there's just been occasionally people get some frustration. All right, Zeb, I am here. It is 7 o'clock. You tell me when you're ready for me, and I'm going to be just looking down a little bit because then I try to get everybody sent to the right places. So tell us when we're up.
It says we are now live streaming on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there we have it. Hello, everyone. I'm Denise Murphy McGraw, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the president of the Junior League of Schenectady and Saratoga Counties. As many of you know who have been getting our regular emails, you've participated in some of our other sessions. The Junior League, along with Samaritan Counseling, Proctor's Collaborative, the United Way of Greater Capital Region, and Schenectady Public Library have all come together, along with about a dozen additional community partners, to bring forward what we are calling the Capital Region Anti-Racism Training Initiative. Pieces of that we're going to explore tonight. It all kicked off with, first started as a book discussion group with Dr. Hayward Horton of SUNY Albany. and we talked about how to be an anti-racist. We then were very fortunate and blessed to welcome Dr. Ibram Kendi, the New York Times bestselling author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, for a fantastic community conversation about his book in his master class on civil rights and civil justice issues, equality issues in our country at this time. We moved from that into this 21-day challenge. It has been a remarkable effort. It was pulled together in large part based on the work of Dr. Eddie Moore. And many of you got to meet him a few weeks ago because he called in for one of these check-ins. And Erin Bellinger, who is the training director actually of Samaritan Counseling, she worked with the United Way on customizing and personalizing and making those that 21-day challenge, not just a national challenge, but really applicative to the capital region. Yesterday, for the most part, we finished our 21-day challenge. And through that time, we had three of these check-ins. This is the final one. I hope that many of you will post questions on our Facebook page and be with us in various ways. Many of you also sent us questions to our email address, crantiracist@yahoo.com. And you can continue to do that tonight. But I am honored to welcome my collaborators, my friends, the directors of this program, our director, Dr. Hayward Horton, and our director of this initiative and our training programs here, Erin Bellinger, for a conversation and a wrap up of our 21-day challenge. So Dr. Horton, how did it go?
I tell you what, I thought that this was an exciting 21 days. I just waiting on the edge of my seat to hear some of the questions and reflections of some of the participants. So I'm excited. But first, I want to thank everybody for participating, for coming on tonight. And I also want to be mindful that we're in the midst of a pandemic. And I want to urge everyone to please stay safe. That's very important. And I want to open up this discussion first by reflecting and noting on the passing of Chadwick Boseman, the great a young actor who played so many great roles, but also most famous for playing the Black Panther. You know, the Black Panther in that role, he was a role model for not only for Black kids, but also for Black people all over the globe. Wakanda represented the full potential of an African society devoid of European colonialism. Black excellence is what that represented. And in fact, you could very well say that was a form of asset framing on a global scale. And so one of the things that I want to note, because many people don't know that the Black Panther was introduced in the mid-60s as a result of the Civil Rights Movement. I segue from that to say that our initiative here is also taking place in the midst of a movement for Black lives. And in fact, this 21-day challenge is part of a greater movement. And that movement is our anti-racist training here. And so what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do? Once again, we're not trying to change hardcore racists. I would dare say that's probably near impossible. What we're saying is that for those persons who want to see a more just, for those persons who want to see a more fair, for those persons who want to see an anti-racist society, then what we want to do is to provide them with some of the tools to join this effort, to join this movement. But the first step is awareness, understanding what racism is, understanding all its different manifestations, how it impacts us at the personal level, how it impacts us at the community level, how it impacts us at the whole societal level. And so this is one of the things we've tried to do. So tonight, we want to hear your reflections. We want to hear your thoughts, hear your experiences. And because we want to not only share, but also hopefully we can all process those emotions and those experiences. The other thing, believe it or not, we also want to hear your recommendations. Is this something that you felt that actually reached you in a certain way, or is there something else that we could do to enhance this? Because this is just the beginning. This movement is something that we are going to continue. We plan to continue this until we have a society where all of those tendrils of racism have been pulled off the institutions of American society. So we want to again thank you. And before we open up to all the questions, I want to pass the baton over to my colleague Erin, and perhaps she might have a word or two to say.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Horton. I want to build a little bit on what you were saying about the building of awareness, because that's ultimately where this entire program grows out of as a place to begin. And it's awareness on a few levels. It's an awareness of external material, resources, experiences, things that are not within us, not within our previous experiences. It's reading, it's taking in videos, it's taking in information that help us to expand our awareness of what the other experiences are like, experiences of systemic racism, experiences of different walks of life. Again, we talked last time about intersectionality and how each of us brings to the table so many different experiences that shape who we are and how we understand the world. And so the awareness number one is let's take in as many experiences as possible to learn more about what it's like to walk in any number of different lives. But number two, the awareness that we're looking to build, and this is where the 21-day challenge has been integral, the awareness is of what we carry within us when it comes to implicit bias, the things that have been trained into us, either overtly or covertly. Some of the scary statistics out there are on children and racism. We know that children can start to recognize differences in race as early as 6 months old. And by 2 to 4 years, they're already beginning to internalize these implicit biases, whether their parents are ingraining them or not. Their parents may be passive participants when it comes to race and raising children, but children are already ingrained or taking in these implicit biases. And by the time they reach 12 years old, children have pretty much made up their mind on how they think about race and racism. So without any intervention, we see that race starts very early, racism starts very, very early on. And so our hope is that we start to bump into those implicit biases that we have in ourselves that perhaps we've been unaware of previously because we haven't interacted with enough material and enough people in the world. And so we start to raise awareness of what we carry and where our own stumbling blocks or points of blindness exist. And we can begin to open those up, open our awareness up of the external world around us, our own internal world, and we can begin to make shifts and then take action from that standpoint, because ultimately we're hoping that this extends into points of action. And that's where, as you'll hear us continue to reference, the Allyship Institute comes in. We want to take all of this learning, all of this awareness, and we want to offer opportunities to play with, now what do we do? Now that we're aware, now that we know something and will continue to learn, I hope, what do we do with that? And so from a parenting perspective, which will be one of the allyship workshops that we offer, how do we take the fact that we know children begin to ingrain these implicit biases very early? How do we take that and learn how to have a very positive impact, how to intervene early, how to help children shape a different narrative so that they don't have to then deconstruct all of these implicit biases that we as adults need to now?
Well, thank you, Erin. That was very well said. Damani, are you on? We are joined this evening by Damani Farley, who is one of our founding members of this initiative and played a key role in helping us develop the 21-day challenge. But everybody should be aware, we're having some technical difficulties tonight. We are doing our best to smile through it. There he is. Damani, I just wanted to have you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your reactions to the 21-day challenge, and then I'm going to follow up on some of the things that Erin just talked about and next steps because that feeds into some of the questions we've been asked both online and in email. So welcome, Damani Farley, and thank you for your work on this project. Okay, can you unmute yourself, Damani? No. Okay. I don't know
Is Zeb with us?
is Zeb still on, if he can unmute you. This is funny. I am going to, let's see. I am not a leader of this.
He's
Oh,
unmuted.
okay.
Yes,
So
yes.
Damani, tell us a little about yourself and your role in all of this and your role in our community.
Okay, so my name is Damani Farley. I'm the founder of Common Thread Consulting. I also work with Schenectady City School District as the community outreach specialist. And my work in the community really is what, kind of gravitated me towards this really important initiative. And what I've seen so far is, the recent, murders of, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor have really like forced the world to a place to reckoning point where we need to really deal with the racism and on a more interpersonal as well as an institutional level. And I think that that's what is unique about this moment in time is that we're at a place where people are, it's almost harder to ignore now. And unfortunately, it had to kind of get to the point where it was almost impossible to ignore in order for people to, take it seriously, both on that institutional and interpersonal level. But we're here, and I think that there's a great opportunity. And as we kind of embark on this work, it's really important that we are, kind of norming ourselves to the principle of anti-racism. And I think that that's kind of my role here. Again, it's something that, we're doing a really good job of, and we're not afraid to be better at. And we just have to kind of keep that constant check for ourselves. And I think, that's where I see my best contribution to this work is, and really making sure that it reaches the people, right? And it's not something that where we're making decisions for the people, that we're making decisions with the people. And, I think that that's where I see my best contribution to this work being.
Damani, you just said something very important. We're not afraid to get better.
Right.
And that has been such a key and pivotal role that you have played in this. Obviously, Dr. Horton, as he leads us through this, we just can't be afraid of that. We can't be afraid to ask each other the hard questions and put them out into the community. Erin talked a little bit about our next steps through this, and to understand our conversation tonight and to understand our conversation around the 21 days, I just want to point out to folks where we're going. Obviously, many people, we have more than 2,000 people participating in this. And when we say that 2,000 people, we say that, they are on, they are getting an email, they are getting some sort of communication from us. We also have, and obviously a lot of it is overlapping, but some are completely different people who get the program and do the program through social media. And we have more than 2,000 folks who were engaged on our Facebook page. How we always saw this program is different than a lot of other 21-day challenges, where on day 21, everybody congratulates themselves, and they probably have a long road of a lot of other work to do, but they are done formally with the program. I was inspired to do this, and really ignited a passion in me because I was invited to do a national 21-day challenge. It was robust. We met every day to discuss it. But on day 21, we finished up on a Friday. We had a larger session with everybody nationally who was involved, and we were done. And they wished us well, and they gave us a gold star. This program is a little bit different. Some of you joined us for the discussion of the Kendi books, the Kendi book, the two discussions of Kendi, with Kendi once and with Dr. Horton, without Dr. Kendi the first time. We then, moving into this 21-day challenge, we will pick up next week on the 9th to really do the thing that so many of you have asked on Facebook, so many of you have posted tonight or sent me emails about, saying, we've learned this now. We've gotten this, these pieces, we've gotten these readings, we've done some work listening to things, but when are we really digging in? And the digging in comes next. And that's, you know, we're not done. This doesn't end it for us. If some of you it may, you've gotten, you learned a little bit more, you opened your email every day, but you know, you need a little break. The kids have to go back to school and you've got to get it together. But for those of you who feel like you're just beginning on this journey, have we got a program for you? Next week on the 9th, we will kick off our Allyship Institute. And as Erin referred to in her opening statement, we will be doing a series of 1 hour to a couple of hour sessions with national and regional leaders, thought leaders on a variety of topics. And this program has been blessed with having people who are leaders right here in our community and are leaders nationally and internationally, like Dr. Horton, who are recognized around the world for their work. We're going to be bringing in some of those folks. Dr. Horton's going to kick us off on the 9th. We go immediately into anti-racism and equity issues in the workplace and in the workforce on the 11th. We will then look at a series of topics, as Erin discussed, parenting that she's going to be talking about. And obviously it's a topic near and dear to Damani as well. He came into this working as a parent. We're going to be looking at behavioral health and health care and developing anti-racist faith leaders. And we're looking to do some work in allyship with the LGBTQ community and really be able to bring all of these together. And it's certainly a menu of options. Not everybody's going to be available to do every session, or you may choose to. Some of you I've heard from on a daily basis, and you want to do more work, and you are going to sign up for each and every hour. Again, all of it is free. All of it is there. And then I think it will formulate our thinking as a collaborative, as an institute, as a community resource in what our next steps are. Are they policy changes that we're going to pursue? Is it doing more internal work? What can we look to do? And that's where I will really look to the leaders on this call, whether it's Damani doing the good work in the schools, it's Dr. Horton, who has led efforts like this nationally and internationally, and Erin, who is one of the premier trainers and training directors and behavioral health specialists in this area. They will really help direct this with all of you. So with that being said, you know, we have some questions, Dr. Horton. I don't know if any of the things you've already heard you want to touch back and circle back on, or I can begin to try to look at you and read questions and not stumble too much.
Yeah, go ahead on and read the questions and what would happen. We can see whether it's a question best suited for me or for Erin or perhaps even for Damani.
Okay, so our first question is where we ended last week, which is on the intersectionality with the LGBTQ community. And talking about that intersectionality and the allyship amongst the Black community and the LGBTQ community, and how can they forge relationships, and what do we see in our program that can help that?
So Erin, do you want to take that one?
Well, one of the things that I can start by saying, and then I'll pass it to you so that you can add to it as well. We started last week with the intersectionality question in terms of understanding intersectionality. Now, intersectionality, I think, is a really important piece of this entire process. And the 21-day challenge has attempted to include some of the intersectionality questions or resources that are necessary for better understanding these multiple perspectives and experiences, but certainly not in totality. There are so many resources out there, and my hope is that everybody who's listening today and everybody who's participating in the program might offer resources back that we can continue to explore. But there are a lot of resources out there when it comes to intersectionality. So intersectionality in general is incredibly important in terms of creating equity and racial equity going forward. In specific to intersectionality between race and the LGBTQ+ community, one of the days that we had addressed some resources for it, and our hope is that we can get an allyship workshop up and running to specifically address and work with the concerns that come up around intersectionality between race and LGBTQ plus community. So that's in the works, and I'm hoping to see more there. But that's right now where we're at with that. I'm wondering if Dr. Horton, you want to add a little bit more to that.
Sure. One of the interesting things about intersectionality is that it first of all, it reveals and underscores the fact that all of us have multiple dimensions to ourselves, multiple identities. And so when we talk about the LGBTQ community, we also want to know that that intersectionality even goes beyond what we see on the surface, because there is a whole different dimension to being Black, or being Latino, or being of some other disadvantaged minority group, and in that population. In fact, one would argue that because this population is almost unseen, or at least ignored, they may very well experience more racism within their community than Blacks and other disadvantaged people who are straight. And so you're talking about a voice that is minimized, a voice that is unheard. I often in my teaching, I actually have had the opportunity to teach students who were Black and gay, and who were in interracial relationships. And they often talk about how they are marginalized by their significant others, friends, and family, and how oftentimes even the various centers, like these gay pride centers, et cetera, actually ignore them, underserve them. And so, and even within that population, the Black trans population even gets discriminated against by the Black gay population. And so we're talking about identities within identities. And so part of what we want to do with this Allyship Institute and talk about, not only to understand what goes on with that population, but perhaps most importantly, what do we do? How do we be allies, not saviors? Well, people don't need saviors. What we're talking about is, just as Damani was saying, working with the community. Not trying to do anything for, but we're talking working with the community, supporting their goals and aspirations. But the first part of that, as particularly as relates to our Allyship Institute, but most importantly, as we talk about understanding the whole notion of intersectionality, we want to know that we talk intersectionality in this context. We really are going deeper than what we normally think of. Okay, we're talking about looking at minorities within minorities within minorities, and yet those people also experience racism, and that goes and often it goes unchecked, and goes unchallenged. So I think that's one of the strengths of what we're going to bring. We're going to be able to bring the type of nuance so that all people will be in a position to ultimately experience not only anti-racism, but a free society. You're muted. I can't hear you. Oh, okay. I think she's saying that she's muted, so we probably need to go on. All right. Okay.
One of the
Are there any
things,
other?
oh, sorry, Dr. Horton, do you want to continue?
No, I was just saying. I was going to ask. I can't see the questions. So, are there any other questions?
Denise, unfortunately, is the one with the questions.
Okay.
I'm not sure what she's trying to communicate right now.
No, nor I. But this is certainly certainly fascinating. So why don't we go ahead on until we can get the questions? Why don't we highlight some of the things that were talked about, and I enjoyed reading about, was the concept asset framing. Okay, and so let's chat about that. And so basically, one of the things that oftentimes when we talk about disadvantaged groups is that we talk about them from a deficit model. We talk about them from what they don't have. And the whole idea of asset framing is separating the people from the social conditions. Okay. And so, oh, we just got a message. Zeb, will you please unmute? Uh, I guess now everybody, in fact, everybody's muted now. So Zeb, if you can hear me, please unmute them. He says he's trying. Okay. So Zeb is trying. So, and so, in essence, and believe me, guys, I didn't do this.
unmuted
I didn't do this
Dr.
purposely.
Horton, at least one of us. Tap on the screen, guys, and see if it'll
On
actually.
purpose.
I know. We warned everybody. We're trying here. We're trying our best. Dr. Horton, will you talk a little bit about, and I know you were just saying something very important, but I just want to finish the previous topic before I
Sure,
was,
sure.
muzzled, is when conflict arises between these organizations, you touched on it a little bit, but these desperate groups. So, when we see, and now Damani is unmuted. Come on, Aaron. I know you could do it.
I am. I was
conflict-
thinking, if Zeb, if you could try to just get it so we can kind of control that function ourselves, because I like to mute, so make sure no noise pollution happens, but I want to be able to unmute myself, if you could. I know you're probably working on that. Thank you.
And Damani, now that you're unmuted, did you have anything that you wanted to touch on in terms of the LGBTQ community and the intersectionality there with the Black and Latinx communities and what you're seeing in your roles throughout the community?
Well, I think, I guess I would just add that, we're in a really interesting time right now where people are starting to recognize, that, racism and whiteness, as you will, as the idea of whiteness permeates between all oppressive groups and all oppressed groups, I should say. So we've been able to kind of take a closer look at that common thread, if you will. But as you start to unpack it, right, it's all about your proximity to whiteness, which will decide your access and opportunity in this country, definitely.
Right.
And we see that within every group. So you have people of color, Black people of color, who also are a part of the LGBTQ community, who every part of their identity, right, comes with a tax, a societal tax. And there becomes that, the four eyes of oppression kind of play into that. And it creates sometimes a place where there's like that internalized oppression, to where we perpetuate racism and perpetuate harm within the marginalized groups. So it's like, I don't want to butcher this quote, but it's like, if we want to seek liberation, then what we really need to be doing is fighting for Black, trans women, because they are the most oppressed group. And once we start to really acknowledge that and uplift the most oppressed, then, by a byproduct of that is that we all, can get.
Yep. Amen. That's absolutely something.
Excellent point you make. Excellent point, sir.
Yep.
Excellent point.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So were there any other questions, Denise?
Well, Dr. Horton, folks want to talk about, they're trying to process, and it goes back to what you've been saying. It goes back to what he said in his opening remarks, that a lot has happened. And even since the start of this, which who would have ever dreamed it could have gotten worse or more chaotic 21 days ago when we embarked on this journey as a community. But they're trying to process, and they want to understand, what to do next. How can they process this? Is it just participating in things like this where you get trainings and education? Are there other things that you both who are in the community, and Erin can certainly speak to if we ever let her speak again, we will. What are your recommendations? what are you seeing going out there where you're saying to yourself, if we only had some more help, if we only had more people involved. So I will kick it over to Dr. Horton. I cut you off before while you were making an excellent point. So why don't I give it back to you?
Well, let me just say this. Without question, if one were to go by so simply by what one saw on television, or in fact, even locally, we're seeing much more violence and disadvantage. I want to point out two things, and without trying to sound too much like a conspiracy theorist, if you've noticed that this violence began to spike, you there?
We are right here, hanging on your
Okay,
word.
yeah, but this violence began to spike when there was serious discussion and consideration about defunding police nationwide. That had become a national discussion. Then all of a sudden you start seeing violence spiking everywhere. I don't believe in coincidences. Just like there was a coincidence of when the Black community during the 60s or early 70s really shifted from civil rights to Black power. And all of a sudden the youth had started getting organized and demonstrating for power. All of a sudden you had the drug epidemics. All right, that was deliberate in terms of to weaken us. I don't think that's a coincidence. And I'm certain that once we have hopefully we get another administration, we better get some more reality in terms of what's going on. I'm certain that we're going to start seeing we'll be able to see those threads, those connections. But the bottom line is this: it's easy for any individual to despair about what they're seeing, and let us not forget again, we got on top of everything else pandemic on our hands. Okay, so all of this is weighing on us all. In fact, that's the very reason why we're zooming now as opposed to all being in one room, perhaps in Proctor's having this televised. So the primary point I want to make is that there is room and there's reason for hope. And the reason there's room for hope is because what you see does not really tell the full story. It doesn't tell the full story about the people who are working at the grassroots every day that they're trying to make things better. Organizations and groups that you've never heard of. And they've got their programs and they're struggling. So what do we do? What do we do? Well, the bottom line is one thing you can do, and particularly if you want to be an ally, is to identify those groups that are doing things at the grassroots level. There are groups that were almost on every issue, whether you're talking, we just talking about the LGBTQ, whether you're talking about dealing with the issues of Black youth and education, whether you're talking about dealing with health disparities among Blacks and other disadvantaged groups, there are organizations that are dealing with this on the daily, and they are in need of allies. Okay, so you don't have to stand on the sidelines. You don't have to wring your hands, and you don't have to get despair because what you see on the television is only a small fragment, because there's a lot of good that's going on. There are people, and in fact, you're looking at 4 people who are doing things in the community that we don't talk about. All right, and so my point is that rather than focus solely on all the things that could be possibly negative or distressing, or perhaps in some cases frightening, there's much more good that's happened. It's unfortunate that just doesn't make the news. It doesn't make the news about the organization are providing computers and scholarships, okay, and broadband access for disadvantaged kids. That's not sexy. That's not going to make the news.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that get involved in those organizations. And if you need help with organizations, you're talking about 4 resource persons who can direct you to some organizations. Okay. And let me also say this: change occurs when you start trying to do things as an individual and you start doing things as a collective, because it's at the organizational level that you can start begin to impact policies and practices not only in your community, in your state, and even in your society. Because remember, the civil rights movement started with Rosa Parks, but the bottom line is that it became a collective effort, and that's why we had that march on Washington. It's because people came together. So find the people that are doing the positive things. Find the organizations that are doing the positive things. They're out there. But if you just focus on the news, you'll never see it.
So
I'm gonna pause right here.
yeah,
No,
so
thank you.
I just like to add, because exactly, I think we really need to focus on the fact that there is so much good work going on. And then, I also think that when we look at the news, sometimes there's a confusion around, people seeing uprisings and people confusing a uprising with a riot, or, what's an appropriate response, to people being murdered in the street. And I think that, where we can really start, one thing that people can do, if that's a question, like where do we start, is to really, challenge the way that you are accepting and receiving the information that's on the news, because it's out there. And think about, some of the motivation behind the reasons why things are said and framed the way they are, because there's a lot of power in language. So when people start to referring to things, gatherings and demonstrations as riots and rioters, I think that, think about, other words such as like uprisings and people that are willing to risk their life and death for justice. I think that that's really important that we recognize, that is a worthy and needed part of the movement, if you will. I look on social media a lot and I see people kind of romanticizing the civil rights movement and
Right.
Martin Luther King. And the truth is, there's been a real intentional effort to whitewash Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. I mean, Martin Luther King was described as a terrorist. He was, talked about horribly. And ultimately, his foundation of peaceful, nonviolent protests, he ultimately assassinated. So that's something that we really can't forget. So that's just one thing to think about as people think like, what do I do next? Challenge the information that you're getting, and be willing to consider new, take new positions upon new information. And hopefully you receive some of that new information here with us tonight.
That is, amen. A lot of what I've seen go hand in glove with the work that we have tried to undertake for a very short period of time. I mean, I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm just the lady who convenes the Zooms. But one of the things that what we really are seeing is part of this empowerment, in addition to the education, in addition to being able to connect with groups that, are getting the work done and you can be part of it and rolling up your sleeves, is educating yourself to the disinformation. And just as Damani just said, that romanticizing of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King. And, everybody thinks now, oh, they must have been so grateful and they write folk songs about him. And all the same things that they're saying now about, people in the movement or our political leaders, that they're socialists, that they're lawless, that they're against the 3 years later, right? It's terrible. And so a big people to identify it, we've all got those people on our, social media feeds. You can count on them putting something cranky on there and making sure we address them and we get toward them. So I see that Erin can speak again.
I can speak now. We'll see how long it lasts. I did want to add though, because each one of you is speaking to ultimately a really important piece of how we process what's happening in the world today, happening on the media, regardless of where we look. How do we process intense experiences? The reality of the intense experiences that we see is that some of them are significantly biased toward misinformation or trying to create a false narrative to gain a particular reaction. Our job individually, so that we can add to positive change, so that we can add to the dismantling of systemic racism, our job individually is to slow down. We can't read an article and then jump on it. We can't just move forward. We need to take a step back. We need to slow down. We need to take in the information that we took in, but then we need to take in more information, and we need to think more holistically about what we're reading. Where did it come from? What's my feeling about it? What's it churning up in me? Don't react. Slow down and think through what we're feeling and what we're reading and what we're seeing, so that we can come up with a response that's well thought through and actually going to be helpful. What's not helpful is when we just react out of an emotion. Maybe something I read triggers a particular implicit bias that I have that I don't realize. If I just react to a feeling of grief or anger or anxiety or whatever that might be, I'm not going to add anything valuable to the discussion. I'm not going to add anything valuable to change. So individually, we need to slow down and we need to take in more information and think for a while, sit with our feelings, which is really hard, especially when they're intense feelings and they're scary or overwhelming feelings. We need to sit with them. Maybe talk to somebody that we can trust to process them well, someone who's not going to add fuel to the fire, so to speak. And we need to sit with them and think through before we do anything. Ultimately, we all add better to society when we have the opportunity to slow ourselves down, ground ourselves, think about what we're feeling, think about what we're taking in, and then make a decision that's responsive, not reactive, as we work to take positive action.
Mhm.
What Erin just touched on is really the cornerstone of what this project is. It's not just, bringing in community leaders. It's not just having people who are very, very much so experts in their fields. It's not bringing in one of the foremost social sciences in the region and throughout the nation but it is about processing what we're feeling through all of this. And that's what's really special about what we've tried to do here. This isn't just let's get educated and go take action. This is also a behavioral health component and what we're struggling with and how we raise our children to be better people and all of these pieces. That's the hope of what this is and what we have the tools to go do after this. Gentlemen, I'm sorry, I know I cut off one or both of you. Damani, did you have anything to react to what Erin just said?
Aaron, so I got to give Aaron a shout out because I think that she highlights on something really important again about this. That's that interpersonal start, place of the journey, right? Like it is a lot of self-reflection. It is a lot of self-inventory, and it's like we do that check of our feelings to improve our behavior. Right. And that's like that part that's really important. So we don't want it to wither on the vine of thoughts and prayers, which often can happen when we start to talk about, racism and things that are uncomfortable for people. And I think as I can't see the questions, but I know that they're piling up. And what I want to say to people who are trying to figure out what to do. And sometimes it's okay not to have the answer, as long as you're willing to ask the right questions of yourself and of others. And some of those questions are, Dr. Horton was talking about, supporting, organizations and people who are doing the work, right? And that's a great thing to do. To understand that, you also want to ask the right questions. Okay, systemic racism didn't go away when we were forming our local businesses and nonprofits. It was still prevalent and still is. So ask the right question. So when you're donating or contribute economically, to this agency, you have to say,